connected to us.
Nice.
So we'll be able to be on Zoom and live streaming on Facebook also. That's always helpful.
That's cool. I don't think
We
I've
do
done it.
have some members who sometimes have a conflict. And so it's really nice for them to be able to come back and see us afterwards. So greetings, everyone. I'm Kim N., President of Dunes-Calumet Audubon Society, and I welcome you all to our monthly program and meeting. Just a few little tidbits to give you all before we have our presentation. We do have bird walks coming up this Saturday. There's 3 spots still available to go to the Highland Heron Rookery. And then the April walks are already out and listed. We also have some volunteer opportunities coming up. We have 2 outreach booths, one on March 25th in Highland at the Indiana Welcome Center. And then we'll also be at the Porter County Earth Day. So if you can help out with that, let us know. We're still doing our community science programs, including great blue heron nesting surveys. And we will be having a couple of trainings to help identify shorebirds for our Miller Beach shorebird monitoring in April and May. We have a beach cleanup at Miller Beach scheduled for April 23rd, Sunday morning. And then don't forget our big fundraiser, our native plant sale at the Indiana Dunes Birding Festival. So the signups for that will be coming out also. Birdathon fundraiser. And then if you are interested in helping out with a committee or the board, just contact us. We'll be updating our website this weekend so that you don't lose track of any of the exciting opportunities that we have for you. So, oh, somebody's coming on with us. So I'm really excited about Beau Schaefer being with us and presenting his program. I like to, and especially since the picture with you on the bikes was like, ooh, I will never be on a bike again, unfortunately, but I do like to enjoy adventures that other people have done. And so it is kind of fun to see where you have been, what you did. And now that I know that there's a book that I could read about it too, I am super excited. So I'm not going to give out too much more. I'll let you talk about yourself and where you're from and how you got involved in everything. And would you like us to do questions at the end then when you're done with your presentation? Because we can
Yeah, that'd be
pull those
great.
up then. Okay,
Sure.
great. Thank you so much. So everyone enjoy the program.
Thanks, Kim. Pleasure to be here with you guys. So I'll take you through my year and we can enjoy some of the reminiscing again. I was actually looking at my book a couple days ago that from 2020. It was pretty funny reading through it again after it being 3 years after that. Some of the stuff I did was pretty crazy. So we'll talk about some of that. My book's on Amazon, so I'll show it to you at the end. And I'm also speaking at the Indiana Dunes Birding Festival. So if you want to stop by and say hi, that would be great too. All right, so I did a big year on my bicycle in 2020 here in Northern Illinois. I live in the far northwestern, well, now I live kind of in the central part, I guess, of Lake County, which is up by Wisconsin. And I did a big year on my bike in Illinois. I covered 7 counties, I think. So here's a picture of me on my bike. I used these 2 bikes for the course of the year. One's a giant bike, another's a Priority Apollo. It's a belt drive bike with an internal gear hub. And I put a picture of my boots on there because those things are fantastic and saved my feet through the entire winter. You know, when you're riding a bike, it's hard. if you wear cycling shoes, it's difficult to walk around looking for birds in the snow and stuff. So I wore hiking boots because, there's a lot of stuff you're not doing. You're doing this not on the bicycle, like walking around. So I wanted to make sure I had some good hiking boots to walk off trail with. And they're waterproof and really warm. And even when it was cold out, I usually tried not to ride my bike in the winter if the temperature was below 20. And if it was in the 20s, there had to be no wind, because if there's any wind at all in the 20s, it's going to be freezing. So that was pretty much the guideline I used, but I could stretch it a little bit if I went across the street. I literally live across the street from one of the best birding places in the county. So that helped a lot, because I could go there and still see a lot of cool stuff. But anyway, those boots and my two bikes were the major tools that I use. But you can see how I have my bike set up too. Like I put my tripod on the rack I had in the back of my bike, and I just put a bungee cord around it to keep my tripod in there so I could take my scope with me. Put the scope actually in the frame bag. So I have frame bags on both bikes. I have little bags on the handlebars for assorted things like my phone and whatever tools or food I might take with me. If I went on a longer trip, I might stick one of the saddle bags on the back. I also have dry bags that I took with me on some trips. And my overnight trips, I had a bivy sack that I took with me to sleep in. So, that's where I bundled all that stuff up. All right, so that's my gear. So all the time I get asked, why did you do this? And because there was it was pretty crazy, but there was a few reasons. These were the main ones, but I'm a big physical fitness person. I've been an athlete my whole life. So I'm a CrossFit coach on top of being a birder, which is kind of a different combination of events. You don't see too many CrossFit athletes that are birders and vice versa. So that was kind of an interesting combination, but I like getting out and doing and physically challenging myself a little bit, but you don't have to be an athlete to be able to do this. If you just go biking in your neighborhood, you can still it's a lot about location, obviously. So if you have some water somewhere and you got some green space, you can find more birds than you know. And that was a part of it too. That was like number 3, but I felt kind of guilty about all the driving I was doing because I'm a birding freak. If there's anyone who's obsessive about birding, it's me. I love going out every day and just seeing what I can find. Obviously it's cool when you can find rare stuff, like, go see a Ross's gull, but even more so than that, I just like going out and seeing what I can find in my own patch, right across the street. And so we'll talk about some of the birds I found there when I was riding my bike, but riding the bike is so much fun because a couple things I really like about doing the bike, you're out in the environment when you're on your bike, but you're also not just walking. I'm really kind of an impatient person. I'm not going to win any awards for most patient birder. I'm that guy, and people that know me, they all joke around. If I'm standing still for like 3 seconds, they're freaking out like there's something wrong because I should be moving by now. But yeah, I like to move around a lot, so I can cover a lot of ground on my bike. But also, you're immersed in the environment, so you can hear. I like to hear birds. I'm fairly decent at identifying birds by song and by sound, so I can find a lot of stuff just by hearing it, and it's really beneficial to be on bike, and you can cover a lot of ground. So that was why I pretty much decided. Plus, nobody really does biking big years. It's not a thing in the Midwest. I've done some research online to try and see who's seeing what and what their totals were. Wisconsin has a fair number of people at least recorded that I could see and what they've done in the past, but I couldn't find much of anything. Even in Indiana, I suppose there probably are, but I didn't really find a whole lot. I don't know. The records are all the green birding records are from California and Arizona primarily. Ron Beck in Arizona and Mark Kudrev in California. They both got over 300 species, I think. So they have the record for species. But I rode more miles than both of those guys. I did over 6,000 miles on my bike. I think Mark had maybe 5,000 something. I think Ron had 4,000 something. So I rode a lot, but I didn't have to ride up mountains. So there's that. that adds a completely different variable to the equation. So, all right. So anyway, here's my patch. You guys obviously are from Indiana, so you have no idea where this is. But just to give you an idea, my house is the little blue dot. So right across the street, I have Rollins, Savannah, which is like, I don't know, 6th or 7th on the hotspot list for our county. I think we've had like 280 plus species that have been found there. So it's a great place. You have all kinds of habitat here. You have a lot of grassland and marshy areas in the middle. You have Third Lake and Druce Lake over on the sides. You have 2 lakes that you can look at. And Third Lake, by the way, is the deepest lake in the county. So in the winter, when it gets pretty cold, there's still open water on that lake most of the time, unless it gets below 0 for extended periods of time. But then you also have this trail that goes around all the way through. And then you have a bike trail at the top that goes to Fourth Lake. And you can, cross over Rollins Road and go north. There's also a trail that extends to the west and goes over to Grays Lake North High School. And there's a little marsh over there too. So there's a lot of stuff over there that's right across the street from where I live. So honestly, when it's freezing cold out, if it's, as long as the wind isn't too bad, I just go out there for a little while. And we have rough-legged hawks out there. We have northern shrikes out there in the winter. It's the best place in the county to find short-eared owls. Third Lake has tundra swans, trumpeter swans, all kinds of ducks. So I'm spoiled rotten living across the street from Rollins. The only better place to live in the county to do a big year would be on the lakefront. So, but it's pretty good. So I had that going for me. So I went over there quite a bit, and I still do. I mean, this is easily my favorite place to bird in all months, pretty much, except for when all the water's completely frozen and you have to go to the lakefront. But it's a great spot, though. All right, so these are just some of the highlights from the year. Those are the number of miles I rode. I had 1,000 miles in May. May was insane. So that's over 30 miles a day average, which was just crazy. I was doing like chasing all over the place on my bike, and chasing on your bike is something, I'll tell you that. Especially when you're going after shorebirds, it'd never stick around for longer than like 20 minutes. So that was fun. November was my second highest, which I would have thought. I would have not thought November would have been my second highest. I would have thought for sure it would either be April or, June maybe. But no, November. A lot of chasing done in November too. So I ended up with 276 species, which as far as I know is the most for anyone who wasn't in California or Arizona. But I mean, I could be wrong, of course. That's all I could find. But it was a lot of fun, though. I'll tell you, there's some good stories. The least number of miles I had was 128 in February because snow, and cold, not great to ride in. January was actually a little bit better than February in 2020. Plus, I was still teaching. I'm a retired high school teacher. In 2020 was my last year teaching. So it was also a COVID year. And so in March, we started to go to Zoom classrooms. And so then I could be a little more free with my schedule and get out more. But February and January, I really didn't put in a ton of miles. Although I did see some really good birds anyway. So I'll take you through like a chronological order and just go through some of the highlights. The pictures are mine. I'm not the greatest photographer, so I'm not going to win awards for photography, but I did get some decent shots to some birds just so you could see what I had. So here in January, you got to go in the wintertime here. You have to go to lakefront if you're going to do a big year, because most of the birds that you need to get your scoters, red-throated loon. The shrike usually is easier to find on the lakefront than it is at Rollins, but there's usually one around somewhere. And gulls. So you got to go to the lakefront for most of those things, although I actually found them in a lot of different places. So I made a couple trips to the lakefront, which were not easy. My first trip to the lakefront, now Waukegan Beach is straight down Washington Street from my house. So it's a straight shot of 15 miles one way to Waukegan on the worst road in the entire county. It's filled with potholes, cracks, you name it. It's all over the place. The drivers aren't the greatest, but the biggest problem with doing a biking big year is the road conditions. If you can ride on decent roads, that makes a huge difference. So I tried to avoid Washington Street as much as possible because it's really horrid. But if you go on Sunday mornings, there's not much traffic, and so you can almost ride down the middle of the road actually and avoid some of the terrible parts of the road. They're on the side of the road. So anyway, I had to make my first trip down there, 15 miles. And the one other problem is that you go downhill to the lakefront, and so you got to ride back home uphill. And almost all the winds where I live they have westerly components almost all the time. So you're literally riding uphill against the wind almost all the time coming home. And that, when you're not used to it, that literally sucks the life right out of your legs. So the first time I did that, I got home, piled into my house, and I just looked at my wife and said, that's probably the stupidest thing I think I've ever done in my life. And sure enough, I was doing it again like 3 days later. So the second time I did it, though, it was surprising. I felt much better than I did the first time, even in that short time span. So it's amazing what your body will become acclimated to after a while. But anyway, I had to do a number of trips to the lakefront. So I tried to pick days that didn't have a lot of wind and weren't super cold. And I was fortunate. I got quite a few nice weather days to ride down there where I was in the 30s, and the wind wasn't above 10 miles an hour, which is great here. So it was pretty good. I think the first time I went down there, I had 3 long-tailed ducks sitting in Waukegan Harbor, which is crazy. I mean, I knew there was one, somebody had reported one down there, so it wasn't pure luck that I went down there and saw one, but it's kind of cool that there were 3 of them. The other 2 nobody had seen before, so that was fun. And there was also a harlequin duck there. So I got a harlequin duck and long-tailed ducks there in one trip, which is pretty awesome. And then there was also a white-winged scoter at North Point Marina, which is farther up the lakefront and literally the farthest point northeast in Illinois, basically. So it's that's about 50 miles round trip from my house to go to North Point Marina. So I had to make that trip also the next weekend, I think. So I did 50 miles, and yeah, it was tiring, obviously, to go that many miles, but hot shower's good. It's important to work on nourishing yourself. So you have to eat good food when you get back. Make sure you stay hydrated, all kinds of stuff like that if you're going to do any kind of extreme exercise, but especially when you're riding around on a bike, because you use up a lot of energy. So I had this bird over here on the left is a Carolina wren, which in Lake County, Illinois is a rare bird. It's not in a lot of other places in the state, but it is up here where I live. So that was a great one. I got there too. Had a nice shrike. Actually, I got the shrike at the forest preserve to the north of where I live, where nobody had reported a shrike. So that was actually found by me, which is always good. Those are my favorite birds, the ones that I found myself, that other people aren't reporting. It's always great when you're out there and you find really cool stuff. And I'm sure you guys know this as birders, but it's really fun when you go out and see something cool that you find by yourself. And this bird on the right is a dark morph rough-legged hawk that I found at Rollins across the street when I was looking for waterfowl one day. So that's also pretty awesome, especially since I think I haven't seen a rough lake since January. I don't know where they all went, but I haven't seen any of them. We had a bunch in January, and then all of a sudden they're gone. So, but anyway, that's a short-eared owl, bottom right. My great picture of a short-eared owl, and yeah. So that was January. January was, mental preparation and learn how to deal with the cold, and realize that everything else is going to be a piece of cake after January and February, which it was. So that was pretty awesome. All right. And then, oh yeah, here's some other stuff too. So here's the trail at Rollins here on the left. And that's what it looks like when it's snow and ice. On my birthday on January 26th, I turned 58, I think it was. Yeah. And then decided I would walk 12 miles in the snow around Rollins and see what I could find. And I think I got 35 species that day in January, which is actually pretty good for January. It was a pretty good day. It wasn't really windy. It was about 32 maybe, but it was all right. So it wasn't too bad. Walking wasn't really easy because it was kind of icy, but if you put your yak tracks on or get your metal studs in the bottom of your shoes when you're walking, it's not too bad really. And then here's Third Lake over here on the right, and Third Lake's got this little bit of open water when it gets cold, and ducks and geese and swans like to pile in there, and so you can get some good stuff. We have trumpeter swans pretty frequently around here at various points in time of the year, but we had some of those. We had mutes, some gadwall, and a bunch of Canada geese, obviously, none of which would raise their head to reveal themselves as a cackling goose, of course. And so, yeah, but it's always something to look at least. It's always good when there's some birds to look at and they're right across the street, especially when it's freezing cold out. All right, February was a lot like January in terms of the weather, but February laid out probably my top 3 birds of the year. In Lake County, Illinois, finding a long-eared owl. I don't know how it is for you guys in the Dunes area, but up here, I've never seen one. I've been birding heavily for about 15 years. That was the first time I'd ever seen a long-eared owl in this county. I'd seen one in a couple other counties, but not in my county. All the really good owl roosting habitat has either been eliminated by development, or our forest preserve is really good at eliminating habitat too. And then we have a lot of good pine stands, but they're all on private property. So we have like virtually nothing on public land that you can actually go see. Well, this guy who lives across the street right by Third Lake found a stand of buckthorn by his house and these were mature buckthorn trees. There was a dense thicket of them, and he found a roost of like 8 long-eared owls. It was incredible. I went down there, I think I saw maybe 4 of them, but I couldn't believe it. That was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And I actually got a decent photo of one, which is even more amazing because I'm not great at taking pictures, but that was super cool. And it was right across the street from my house, which was incredible. I mean, I got home from school we have a text thread for our county. Like, I'm sure you guys probably have something like that, but so when people find stuff, they go on text alerts or group me and post what they had. And Joe goes on there and says he found a long-eared owl, and at 4 o'clock after school, and I couldn't believe. I ran home so fast and changed clothes and got on my bike so fast. I was there in like 15 minutes. It was unbelievable. It was really, really awesome. So that was the highlight of the month. But then over here on the right, we get some gulls. This is, I don't know where that is. I think it's Rollins, but I'm not 100% sure. I don't know. But we get a lot of gulls on the ice over at Rollins too, and next to the open water. And then March came, and obviously then the weather started to get better, and I found another sweet bird. So my patch at Rollins, the area at Rollins Savannah, which includes Third Lake and Druce Lake, I've never had a red-throated loon there. I have common loons there quite a bit, but I saw this bird and I thought, oh, I saw it with my bins and thought it was just a double-crested cormorant. So I got my scope on it just to make sure, and sure enough, it was a red-throated loon, which was unbelievable. I'd never ever seen a red-throated loon anywhere away from the big lake in this county. I know that people have had them out at the Chain of Lakes area, but that was a long time ago, and I've never seen one out there, and I go out there quite a bit. So that was really cool. So that was another major highlight. See, this is a bird that I found myself on my bike. Nobody else knew anything about this bird. So it's another one of those really big gems that you'd find. And I wouldn't have found this if I wasn't on my bike. I mean, I guess I could have found it if I was driving around, because I basically check kind of the same places in my car. But yeah, but it's in an area where not too many people go. So that was kind of cool. Got a great black-backed gull out at the fairgrounds, which was another spot in my patch. It's about 5 miles from my house. So I have Rollins Savannah to the north, and then to the southwest, I have the county landfill, which is also a great place for gulls. And the fairgrounds, we have the fairgrounds there, and that's right next to the landfill. So a lot of times the gulls just like to hang out in the parking lot of the fairgrounds while they're waiting to go make a visit to the landfill. So a nice great black-backed gull. Here's a nice first-year Thayer's gull sitting right in the parking lot. That's a nice 2-foot view for you. Can't beat that. And then we had pelicans over at Rollins. I had my lifer pelicans at Rollins, not lifer, but sight lifer pelicans. I've never had pelicans there before, so that was really cool. So in March, I started to put a lot more miles on the bike and get ready for spring, which started to get pretty crazy. So April came around and I did my first biking big day in April. So one of my goals for the year is I was going to try and break the green big day record for Illinois. We have a Southern Illinois birding blitz that the I forgot the name of it's the Cache River area down in Southern Illinois. They do a birding blitz and raise money for the watershed down there. I have not been able to participate in that, mostly because my son's birthday is that weekend and we're always out of town. But what I tried to do is a big day at the end of the month when I think the 26th, I think I went on April 26th, and just did a warm up to try to get ready for May, when I would make an effort to see if I could break the big day record, which was set at the birding blitz in 2016, maybe, by three or four birders around a Rothrock and a few other people. I can't remember them all right now, but they had 135 species on their bike, which is pretty good. So I was going to try and see if I could beat that in Lake County. So I had to go out and figure out a route, figure out logistics on stoppage and resupply and how to bring food and drink and all the stuff with me and all kinds of stuff like that. So that was a big goal for me in April. And obviously there's a lot of birds to see in April because you're starting migration for the spring pretty heavily. So hit a couple of good ones. So I got my blackbirds to start with. Now the Rusty on the left was off the bike path at Rollins. So right across the street. Again, I get another cool bird at Rollins. Now this Brewer's blackbird in the upper right, that's a really good one because we don't ever get Brewers away from the lakefront. They breed at Illinois Beach State Park, so that's an easy place to get them. But getting them away from the lakefront out west in the western parts of the county, which is where that bird was, that does not happen often. I have not seen. I think I had one at Rollins one year. I think that's the only one I've ever seen away from the lakefront. except for this bird that I had in 2020, which was on, a farm type road, basically, where there's a hunting club. And so there's guns going off in the background all the time, which is even more weird. But yeah, that was a really cool bird to get on my bike. And it's kind of cool too to see, you can see the tail posture on the brewers and how diagnostic that is. They hold their tails up like that when they're foraging, which makes it pretty easy to identify them a lot of times. They're a lot shinier than the rusties too, which are more drab black. And then the vespers start showing up early in the month. Had one singing on a road. And they had my first chase of the year. So a chase is when somebody finds a bird and the same day you go see if you can find their bird. So this is the really exhausting part of doing a biking big year, is doing the chases. So I hadn't really done one up to this point because there hadn't been really anything to chase. But then Al Stokey found a eared grebe at Independence Grove Forest Preserve, which is fortunately not too far. It's about a 45-minute ride by bike up a trail. And I don't even have to ride on the road. So that was pretty good. So I shot down there. Unfortunately, I couldn't go until after I was done with school though, because I was still working with my students. So at 3:00, I bolted over there and the bird was found in the morning. So I was not really sure it was even going to still be there. So I got my bike out, shot over there as fast as I could, got there, and there it was right there in front of me. Beautiful look. So that was pretty cool. I was really lucky on all the chases I did this year. I think I only chased one time, and I don't really even think it was a chase. It was birds that have been seen a couple of times in a spot. And so I went to find hoary redpolls at the Chicago Botanic Gardens in, I think it was December I went there. And that's like a 50-mile round trip ride for me. And I didn't even get a redpoll. There was nothing. So I think that's the only whiff I had on a chase though. I was pretty lucky. I had some pretty long ones too. And then we had the ospreys start coming back to the cell tower. So there's a nice cell tower not too far. I rode my bike over there and saw the osprey at on Grass Lake Road, right in the Chain of Lakes area. But of course, the shorebirds are the best. And those are the ones that I thought would kill me because you just got to run all over the place looking for them. My second chase in April was to find long-billed dowitchers on Route 45, right on the side of a highway. Not the greatest place to look for birds. But when you're on your bike, that's one good thing, is you can pull yourself way off the road and not have to worry about being near traffic. I didn't really have to ride up Route 45. I could get there by taking side roads. So I only had to go up Route 45 a little ways on my bike. So that wasn't too bad. And even though it's a fairly major road, during the middle of the day, there's not really much traffic. So I didn't really have too many cars that I had to deal with. So that was my second chase. And I got long-billed dowitchers, which are in this county are a really good bird. You don't get those. I didn't have them at all last year. I don't get them every year. So getting them in 2020 was pretty good. And then Waukegan Beach is always the best spot and one of the best spots in the county, period, during migration, because we get all kinds of stuff that show up there. Unfortunately, it has to be at the end of Washington Street, which is the worst road in the county, but I made a bunch of trips down there and, just tried to pick strategic times to ride down there where there was less traffic. And so it made it a little bit better. And so here's a nice 3-species picture of a piping plover, a dunlin, and a sanderling, and then a willet down here. I don't think I had the willet on the same day as those other guys, but still a number of good birds at the beach in April. Piping plover is always a good one. The other two are pretty common, but piping plover, not always. You can always get that one. And then May was crazy. So I rode 1,000 miles in May, and there was literally chase after chase. So the spring bird count was May 6th. We have a spring bird count, which I think you guys call your Indiana big day or something like that. I can't remember the exact wording, but it's the same thing as what we do anyway. So I did that on my bike, rode up to Channel Lake State Park, which is in the far northwestern section of the county, which is about an hour one way on my bike, and did the count, then rode my bike back. That was 2 hours of riding, plus all the riding at the park, and it's a large park. I think I covered probably 60 miles or something, just doing the bird count, I think. Got like 89 species or something like that, which is pretty cool. Channel Lake State Park is great too. There's a lot of cool stuff there. We'll talk about that later, I think. But then on the way back, let's see, do I have a picture of this one? I don't think I do. On the way back, I got an alert on my text that there were black-necked stilts and yellow-headed blackbirds at a floodle out in far southwestern county, and I was nowhere near that. And so I'm at home thinking, oh great, now do I want to get on my bike and go chase over there if I just rode 60 miles? Because I was pretty tired. So I had something to eat, drank some coffee, and took a nap. Actually, I can take naps after drinking coffee because my body is strange. So yeah. So I did that, woke up from my nap, got on my bike, and rode an hour out to the floodle. And sure enough, there's two black-necked stilts, which is another crazy bird for Lake County. We don't get those very often either. And also yellow-headed blackbirds, another great bird in the same spot. And actually in that same floodle, the next day I went back and got a black-bellied plover and common gallinule in the pond across the street. Crazy. That's just nuts. So that was pretty cool. So next weekend after that one, somebody finds a scissor-tailed flycatcher at Trumpet Marsh, which is also up by North Point Marina in the far northeastern section of the county by the lake. That's another hour round trip on the bike, or excuse me, hour one way on the bike. So I went out there, got the scissor. Well, I was debating whether to go in the first place because I just run my fanny off the day before going after all those other birds. I think actually this is the day after the spring bird count. Yeah, it was, because I remember thinking I just went, did all that riding. I don't know if I want to go ride up to North Point Marina again. But I said, if it's there and I don't go, you can't really do a big year. So you got to go. So I went, and it was right there, sitting up nice. Got some great photos. There's a bunch of other people on it, which helped me get on the bird, which is really nice. It's always great when you're doing a big year too, because everybody helps you, and there's so many people helping you find stuff. I wouldn't have found half these birds without people helping me. So that was a lot of fun. And then the one great thing about COVID in 2020 is that they closed off some of the public areas, which is terrible if you're driving places. So I get that. But when you're on a bike, it's awesome because the bikes can get in, the cars can't. So there's no people there walking their dogs. And so on the beach, there's always people walking their dogs and they're not supposed to be. And of course, it scares all the birds away. And Waukegan Beach is our best shorebird spot on the lakefront. So I don't know when it was. I think it was in the 18th, something like that. I rode my bike down to the lakefront and had a pretty amazing day. I started up north and had a prairie warbler, which we never got. Then went to the Lions Woods and had a Kentucky warbler, which we never got. So, I mean, the birds I got this year were just insane. A lot of these birds I think I've had Kentucky warbler 3 times total ever on the lake or in Lake County. So that was amazing. Prairie shows up every once in a while. I've had a few more of those, but still not very common though. And then from there, I went down to Waukegan and got a red knot, which is another bird that we don't get very often. And it was a beautiful breeding plumage, which we also, when we get red knots, they're usually in the fall. We don't usually get that many in the spring. And that was a stunning bird. And there were no people there at all. I got there, I rode my bike in there. And this is a place that normally is packed with people by, 9, 10 o'clock in the morning in the spring. And there was, I think, one person walking in there, and that was it. It was incredible. I've never seen it so dead before. And there was birds all over the place. So that was cool. And then on the way out, hit a yellow-billed cuckoo in a shrub right down the road from the beach. So that was fantastic. And of course, May is warbler time. So just warblers all over the place. I got some nice photos of a few of them. My best warbler spot was at Butler Lake, which is right behind the high school where I teach. There's a nice little trail you walk around up back there. So I just walked around behind, got some warblers, and a nice shot at a Cape May, which is my second favorite one after the black-throated blue, but that was a beauty. And then a nice black-throated green and a black Bernie, and also sat still for a couple of minutes so I could actually take a photo of them, which is super nice of them. But May was crazy and it was pretty tiring. So by the end of May, I was pretty pooped. Oh yeah, and also then Steve Huggins finds a neotropic cormorant, another crazy bird, at the same marsh where the scissor-tailed flycatcher was found like 2 weeks before. So then I turned around, had to make another sprint to Trumpet Marsh again and find neotropic cormorant, but that bird showed really nicely as well. So I've had some pretty awesome birds this my first half of the year. I don't remember what my total was at the end of May, but it was pretty good. Now, the one thing, Lake County where I live, and it's kind of similar for you guys at Indiana Dunes, you're by the lakefront, so migration is great because you get all kinds of cool stuff that show up there. But in the summer, things kind of slow down a little bit. And where I live, we don't really in June, finding anything interesting in June is not very common. So it was time I had to start thinking about how I was going to get new birds. There were a few that I could get. White rump sandpiper being the most regular one. We get white rump sandpipers on the lakefront at the beginning, the first week in June, fairly regularly. So I made a few trips down the lakefront. I was 0 for 3 going down there looking for a white rump, I remember at one point. And then on my 4th trip, which was like June 6th, I think, 6th or 7th, maybe, I was down there and ran into Adam Sell, Adam Sell is a good friend of mine. He leads trips for Red Hill Birding in the Chicago area, and he's great at finding birds. And so Adam was there, and I walked around with him, and we saw not much on the actual beach. We walked back to the parking lot. There happened to be fluttles in the parking lot, in the gravel of the parking lot. And sure enough, that's where the white rump sandpiper was. We look over there with our scopes. I didn't even have my scope set up yet. Adam puts his up and finds the bird in like 2 minutes. I didn't even have my scope set up yet. So I set my scope up, and this is not my photo. This is actually my friend Andy Stewart took that photo, and he sent a picture to me so I could put it in here. But it's a really nice photo of white rump. You can see the long primary extension in the back. So that was a great bird. I always love seeing those birds. They're nice little chevrons running down the side of their breast. Really pretty shorebird. So that was a good way to start the month. And then Adam finds a great blackback gull in June, which was nuts. Finding a great blackback gull in June. And so got a really nice look at that bird. And then blue grosbeaks show up when they show up, it's either June or July. They're almost always juvenile birds, but this bird I think was an adult male, which is really cool. So this was at June 24th. I was out of town, I think, when they found this bird. So Adam and Andy Stewart found this bird at Illinois Beach, and I was down in St. Louis, I think, visiting my in-laws. And so, of course, wondering if I was going to get a shot at finding this bird. So I got back 2 days later, rode my bike out there on the lakefront at Illinois Beach State Park. And sure enough, there he was singing at the top of the tree, which is always nice in beautiful sunlight in the morning. So that was a really great bird to get. But that was it for June. There wasn't much for June. It's time to start planning trips. So I planned one for July at the beginning of the month. So in Lake County, there wasn't much, but in the southern counties, so in DuPage County, Kane County, McHenry County, there's birds that I didn't have yet. So I decided I'm going to have to go out of the county and find stuff if I want to get some New Year birds. So there actually was one bird I still had to get that was not that was in Lake County. I didn't have a broad-winged hawk yet, and there was one that someone had reported nesting in Highland Park, right next to the Ravinia Park, and so that was a pretty nice bike ride on a nice bike path down there. So I decided I would do that. It was about an hour one way. It's about what most of the trips are from my house to anywhere, basically, out of my patch. And I had really nice looks at a parent, and I think there was 3 fledglings. So that was pretty cool. That was my first broad-winged hawk nest. That was fun. And of course, I had to text the nice lady who lived by the hawk so that she could come out and show me where they were, because I was looking in the wrong place. So once again, I wouldn't even have found them if it wasn't for her. So she was very, very sweet. And then I decided I was going to make a bike ride to DuPage County. Now, DuPage County is a haul from my house. It's about round trip about 150 miles. So I had to make it would have to be an overnight trip if I was going to go. So I had to figure out how I was going to do the overnight thing and have enough food and drink and all kinds of stuff. So I did it at the beginning of July and made my trip down there. And the trip, as far as riding the bike, was fine. The problem I had was it was like 90 degrees and I didn't bring enough water. And it was COVID, so people were all locked up and you weren't allowed to go in places. And so I didn't do a good job of figuring out how I was going to resupply my water. So I ran out of water basically. And I had to have my wife come and pick me up at the end of the first day because I wasn't going to make it through a second day, which was kind of embarrassing, but live and learn, make some mistakes. She was nice enough to come fetch me. And then I went back home and reevaluated the whole thing. And, I wasn't going to give up on it. I'm going to do it and do it right. So the second time I went probably, I think it was like 2 weeks later. I went at the beginning of August. Might have been, no, that was a different trip. It was at the end of July still. So I made another venture out there, and that went much better. Had all the water I needed. And I sacked out. I took a bivy sack with me and on my bike and just sacked out in a churchyard overnight and slept like a log. It was great. Got up the next morning, went to the Dunkin' Donuts across the street for coffee, and I was ready to roll. Then I might have gotten 6 birds that trip. I had yellow-throated vireo, which is not the yellow-throated vireo, yellow-throated warbler, which is my most expensive bird of the year. I had to pay $15 to get into Morton Arboretum for that bird. So that was kind of funny. And then had summer tanager, monk parakeets, which are in that picture. And I think I had, no, that was a different trip. So I guess it must have just been those, but yeah, that was still good though. So I had some new birds, nice trip, felt good to be able to do it and not mess it up and have somebody come fetch you. So that was part of the thing on my bike too, is I realized there was some stuff that I could do that I didn't really realize I could do, like doing an overnight trip on a bike. Who would have figured that? So that was kind of fun. And I did another one in August. So August, you're looking for shorebirds mostly in August. We had a couple of spots. So we have Techney Basin in Northbrook, which is just north of Chicago. Had some nice golden plovers there. That was about an hour trip, but it was a nice trip down a bike path, the North Shore bike path, which is pretty nice. Stilt sandpipers. And then my afternoon trip. So this upper right is a buff-breasted sandpiper. That was the worst trip I took the entire year, I think. I had to ride down Washington Street again, but normally when I ride down Washington Street, I do it like on Sunday morning when there's no traffic, because there's no shoulder. And what side of the road there is filled with potholes and dangerous, basically. But this bird was found in the morning, and I had something going on. I can't remember. I had an appointment of some sort. So I couldn't get down there until like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, which of course is now an afternoon rush hour. And everybody's driving east. Everybody's driving west from Waukegan in the morning. So that's the other thing. If I go out there in the morning, even on a weekday, I'm going reverse of the traffic flow. So it's not nearly as bad. But on this day, I was going with traffic flow, which was not good. And so cars are piling up behind me. They can't really pass me because it's a single lane road on one side of the street. This was easily, I did not have maybe one issue with a driver the entire year other than this one. Some lady was turning left. This was crazy too. Not this situation, but a previous one, the other one that I had with the driver. She was turning left, and I was sitting in the lane of traffic ready to go straight at the light. We were sitting at a red light. She had the green light and was turning left in the other direction, going opposite direction. And she cut her left turn so sharply that she literally was driving straight at me, making her left turn while I was sitting there waiting in traffic. I had to start yelling at her to not hit me. She was looking at her phone. She wasn't paying any attention to what the heck she was doing. So she saw me there and jerked the car back. So everything was fine, but unbelievable. Not paying attention when you're making a left turn. But that was the only other issue I ever had. But this one, when I went after the buff-breasted sandpiper, I had a guy drive up behind me in the truck. He was in this truck, literally swearing at me and saying all kinds of things in Spanish I didn't understand, but he was swearing at me. I knew that. And I thought for sure that this guy was going to get out of his car and try and do something. I don't think he would have caught me anyway. But fortunately, though, there was a cop who pulled somebody over like 5 miles up the road. So I had a cop in front of me. So the guy just turned left and disappeared. So I was saved by the policeman who didn't even know he saved me. But that was my road rage incident for the year. Fortunately, I didn't have any more of those, but got down to the beach, tons of people on the beach at 3 p.m. in August. And I'm like, I can't believe there's a bird here. So I walked down the beach and keep walking about a mile down the beach. And at that point, there's not very many people. They don't go down that far. So I just keep going. And sure enough, there's the bird walking on the beach about a mile down the beach. That was nuts. But I figured I had to go that day or that bird was going to be gone. But sure enough, next day he was still there. So could have gone the next day. But, that was cool though. I made it through the worst day of riding my bike ever. So everything else was good after that. And then September, more good stuff. And the weather's great September for riding a bike. So can't really complain about that at all. Had a nice leased bittern at Waukegan Beach again, and Nelson Sparrows at Rollins. Actually, I got my Nelson Sparrow. Oh, I rode to Montrose for my Nelson Sparrow. So I made my only trip to Chicago. I went to the Chicago Botanic Garden, but that's north of Chicago. The only trip I made to Chicago, I think, was for the Nelson Sparrow. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. So I went to Montrose, which is a really easy bike ride. And in around Northwestern University in Evanston, they have these huge bike lanes, which is so cool. They actually have bike lanes which are partitioned off from traffic by little cones and stuff. So it's not just like a painted line on the road. It was pretty awesome. So you ride through by Northwestern, and then you also ride right by Loyola. So you're riding through two college places, which is really nice because there's lots of people around. There's really slow traffic. There's not really much in the way of crazy driving going on there. There's coffee shops all over the place. I love stopping at coffee shops on my trips too. So that's a plus. And Montrose is on the north side of Chicago, so you don't have to drive far into the city, which is good too. Like going to Park 566 for a Ross's Gull, didn't have to do that. So I got my Nelson Sparrow down there, and yeah, that was a really nice trip. That was a beautiful day too. And I think back on it, it was like sunny and 75 or something. Beautiful day, no wind. It really, when you're on your bike, you're out there riding around looking at birds, and you're riding on a great day like that. It's really awesome. It was one of my favorite things is just being out in the great weather and enjoying it. Obviously not in January and February, but those were the training months for the rest of the year. Then let's see, I had a crazy day, August 10th or 11th, I think it was, or somewhere around there. I went to one floodle that we have right by the landfill, which is once again about 5 or 6 miles from my house. If that, it's a really short bike ride, maybe 30 minutes. And there was an American avocet and red-necked phalaropes in the same floodle. Now, the funny thing was I found the red-necked phalaropes and reported those to everybody so that people could come out and find them. And so, because that's an extremely rare bird in Lake County. And so people came out and found them. And then somebody else found an American avocet in the same floodle, and I didn't see it when I was there. That's insane. Now, so I had to go home. And at the time, I remember when I found the birds, I was driving my car. I was doing a scouting mission in my car. So I was actually driving. So I found the birds in my car, drove home, got my bike, and then rode my bike back. And then found the birds so I could count them on my green big ear list. And they were, the avocet had flown to a different floodle, which actually was right at the fairgrounds. It was even closer to my house than it was the first time. So that was nuts, getting those two birds on that day like that. Those are both birds that easily are missed during any one year. I think I had an avocet last year, but I did not have red-necked phalaropes last year. So that was a pretty awesome day. And we also have, so in the Illinois Ornithological Society has a big SID competition at the end of September, which we use as a fundraiser. So we try to gather money, and then we have a big SID competition to see who can get the most species, and everybody picks their favorite spot. I love to go to Rollins, of course, because number one, it's across the street from my house, but number two, there's also varied habitat there. We can get a lot of cool stuff sometimes. I think in 2020, I had my personal best. I think I've done big sits there about 5 years now. 79 was our best. We had a great year, a great day that day. We had a golden plover we have this little mud spit that sits out in the middle if the water levels are low enough. And it's amazing what, in that little bit of mud, we'll get 20 shorebirds out there. And it's crazy. And you'll get some really cool stuff. We had a golden plover show up that year, and that was another site bird for me. I'd never had a golden plover there before, so that was really cool. And then last year when we did it, we got a Hudsonian godwit out there. That's even more crazy. So it's a really cool place to do a big sit. And then in the evening, you can look for short-eared owls and American bitterns, which we have out there. And it's a really great place. If you ever get a chance to come out to Lake County, you got to go to Rollins. Just let me know. I'll give you a nice tour. All right, so that was September. Then we come to October, which is waterfowl and hawks. Started looking for hawks and got to get scoters. I didn't really have, I think I had a white-winged scoter in January in the harbor at North Point Marina, but I still needed black and surf. And so I had to start doing lake watches to find those birds. And so we had a lake watch day. I don't remember what the actual date of our lake watch was, but it was, I think somewhere in the second week of the month. Andy Stewart, Cece Bernberg, and Ross Bernberg joined me. And we had one of the best lake watches I remember having. It's not anything like Miller Beach, but at Illinois Beach State Park, if we get some decent east winds, we had like 10-mile-an-hour easterly winds. We don't want really strong because we don't have a wind block for an easterly wind. So, but it was just enough that it wasn't too bad. And the birds were much closer, and we had some killer looks at surfs, blacks, and white wings, all three of them. It was crazy. And so, got all the scoters that day. We had, I don't know if we had tundra. I don't think we had tundra swans that day. No, that was from the Hawk Watch. So the best place to get tundra swans is at the Hawk Watch. You can often see them flying by at the end of the month and the beginning of November. So I had some nice looks at tundra swans. And we actually had finches in 2020. We had a red crossbill show up at Van Patten Woods. So I rode my bike over there, got that bird. That's not too bad. It's about 45 minutes to there. And then one of the best days of the year in October was I should have put all the dates down for all these. I apologize. I should have been more specific on the dates, but it was in October. But I was at the Hawk Watch, actually found a golden eagle, which is over here on the right. That's not my photo though. It's Mima Atani took that photo of a juvenile golden eagle that flew by at the Hawk Watch. So we got a golden eagle, which is another incredible bird that we don't get too much. We get them pretty much every year, but finding one that you can actually see well enough and photograph is really rare. So on the same day as that golden eagle, somebody found, the McClellans found a cattle egret, which is another really rare bird in Lake County. I think I've seen maybe 3 cattle egrets total ever in Lake County. And then there was one at Waukegan Beach, which is about an hour south of Fort Sheridan Hawk Watch, which is where I was. So then I debated whether to leave the Hawk Watch because I needed a goshawk also still. So I was hoping one was going to come by at some point. So I decided, do I want to stay at the Hawk Watch? Do I want to ride my bike down to Waukegan Beach? Eventually I left it and rode down there, and the egret was still there hanging out with the gulls. So that was an incredible twofer of a golden eagle and a cattle egret in the middle of October. So that was really awesome. And then I rode my bike home another hour. So that was a lot of riding that day. I can't remember how many total miles that was, but riding to Fort Sheridan is an hour. Then riding down to Waukegan is another hour from Fort Sheridan. Then riding home is it's another hour back home from there. So 3 hours with the riding the bike. But I got to take breaks in between, so it wasn't too bad. Then I had my longest chase to date at the end of October, the last week in McHenry County. Somebody found a black-headed grosbeak at their feeder, which was nuts. That was a state bird for me. So of course I hemmed and hawed about whether or not I wanted to make a trip that far. in one day and back. So that was a 1 day trip of a round trip. I think it was 78, 80 miles, somewhere between 75 and 80 miles. I can't remember exactly how much it was, but it wasn't quite 100 though. I know that. I think it was somewhere around 75 or 76. But got there, and usually you chase these birds and you get there and you're gonna have to wait for them to show up. Who knows if they're gonna be there? You gotta wait a long time for them to show up. I got there and the bird was literally at the feeder when I rode my bike into the driveway. Everybody's yelling. There's 2 or 3 of my friends were there. They're all yelling, "It's on the feeder! It's on the feeder!" So I just ran around the house, got a good look at him. I got photos of it, but mine were terrible. So this one, I think, is Jerry Hampton's photo of the bird on the feeder, and that was incredible. Really, really cool. And, we sat there and enjoyed it for a while, and then headed home in about an hour after that, I think. And it was really nice. These people that have these birds in their feeders are so nice, letting everybody come and look at their yard. So anytime you get to do that, bring some seed, be respectful of people's wishes, make sure you're doing what they want you to do. But I had some nice people and some nice interactions with people in their backyards on this big year too. That was pretty cool. And then we got November, which is another feeder month. So finches still needed finches, and we had a few red poles that showed up at Middle Fork Savannah, which is one of our forest preserves. That's not far from Fort Sheridan, so it's a little less than an hour down there. Rode down there with Stephen Hurst, found a nice common red pole right in front of me in the parking lot. You gotta love it when you're chasing birds and they show up right in front of you in the parking lot. It's hard to beat that. And then a couple of feeder birds. So we had a spotted towhee and palatine, and an evening grosbeak in Gray's Lake right by my house, probably a half an hour from my house on the bike path. Both of these super nice people letting us go in their backyards and see these birds. And that evening grosbeak was there for about 20 seconds. It showed up. Rob Bernberg got a great photo of this bird while I was sitting there, and I didn't even have my camera on it yet before it took off. Fortunately, he was ready and snapped off a great shot, and that bird was gone, and it never showed up again. So that was pure luck, as many are many of these situations, but that one really crazy. And then the spotted towhee, we had nice looks at that for a long period of time. That bird hung around for a while. That was cool too. And both of these birds were on the same day. So I went and got a grosbeak and then kept going south to Palatine and got a spotted towhee. Whoa, that was a heck of a day. So then we're in November. We're coming up to the end of the year, and I'm about out of birds that I can get. I still needed a snowy owl, which I was hoping to get. Still needed a northern goshawk and a Franklin's gull. And I missed all 3 of those birds on the year. So those were easily my 3 big misses. And that northern goshawk, that was the most frustrating one, because I honestly think I had one. I was riding my bike north in the winter, and I think it was February. And I saw a raptor sitting in a tree right next to the road when I was riding the bike, right by a hedgerow where there was a ton of sparrows. And I looked at the bird, and I thought immediately, I said, that's a juvenile goshawk. I mean, the streaking on the breast, the jagged white lines on the large tail. I mean, I was for sure certain that's what it was. So I go to get my camera out of my bag and take a photo of it. And I'm spazzing out completely because I'm freaking that this is a goshawk, because I never see goshawks anywhere except maybe at the Hawk Watch. And sure enough, I freak the bird out and it takes off. And so I never get a photo of it. But I'm pretty confident, so I'm going to count it. Except that the same day, a friend of mine shows up there to see if he can find the goshawk and takes a picture of a red-shouldered hawk, a juvenile red-shouldered hawk, which is also extremely rare in Lake County. And so I'm thinking, okay, now having both those birds in the same spot is pretty dicey. So now I start doubting myself, and I don't, fine, I don't count it. I'm not counting that bird. So I didn't count it. And it ended up being, one of the birds that I missed. But, such is life. It was annoying to me, but I should have gotten a good picture of it because it was literally right in front of me. If I just would have been calmer about getting my camera out, it would have been good. But anyway, it was that. And then the snowy owl I missed showed up the day I flew to South Carolina to visit my dad for Christmas. Literally the day I left, it showed up at Waukegan and everybody got great looks at it. It was there for one day. But what are you going to do? So missed that bird. And I was actually at Fort Sheridan at the lakefront to do a hawk watch the day the Franklin's gulls. So Franklin's gulls love to migrate down the lakefront following a low pressure system in November. So if you have killer low pressure comes through the next day, look for Franklin's. And I knew this and somehow forgot it, but it happened the day before. So I was out there looking for hawks because they'd like to do the same thing on those northwesterly winds. And so I was out there ready to look for a goshawk. Meanwhile, everybody's posting about all the Franklin's gulls moving down the lakefront. So I run down there to see if I could find them, and of course missed them all because they just flew by within the span of 20 minutes and were gone. So that was a tough loss, but yeah, live and learn. So those were my 3 big misses for the year. Other than that, I had pretty much every bird I could possibly think of getting without going to Southern Illinois. I think if I would have gone to Southern Illinois and made it, if I could have ridden my bike down to Southern Illinois, I would have had a good shot at getting 300. There's a lot of birds down there that I could have gotten, but maybe not. I don't know. It would have been closer. All right, so we still had some great ones coming up though. At the end of November, we had purple sandpiper show up at North Point Marina, and that was pretty wild. I found on the group me that we have for the rare bird alert for Illinois, somebody posted the purple sandpiper, and so got on my bike. It was a great day for a ride too. I remember it was Sunday. It was actually sunny and pretty warm for November with very little wind. So I didn't think twice about that one. I'm like, I'm out of here. So I went down there, got there, and the bird was flying back and forth between the mouth of the harbor and the south end of the harbor. So it just kept flying back and forth. And people kept posting, oh, it's here. Oh, it's here. So I get down there at the south end, and then people report it was at the north end. So I ride my bike down to the north end, and then they report that it just flew back to the south end. So I'm not kidding. I had to ride back and forth like twice. I was exhausted by the time I got there and found the bird. But those guys were all really nice. They got me on the bird right away, got nice photos of it. And purple sandpiper was another one that we don't get. I mean, I don't think we had one in 2020. I don't think we've had one since then. In Lake County anyway. So that was great. Yeah, and then I think I had a whooping crane at Middle Fork, Savannah at like 2016 or something like that, but not for a long time. And there's we had ones that were hanging out multiple days out at Glacial Park in McHenry County. And so I decided what I was going to do. They were roosting there with the sandhills, and then they would get up, according to observers and people that lived out there that had spent, a couple days out there. They would get up at dawn and fly somewhere else to feed, so they weren't around most of the day, but then they come in again at dusk to roost. And so I decided I was going to get up and ride out there and be out there for sunrise. So that's about a 2 hour ride for me from my house. So I had to get up pretty early. I think I left my house by 4 and was out there at the crack of dawn. And sure enough, there they were. I didn't see them when the sun was coming up. I'm looking at all the sandhills. I didn't see any white cranes anywhere. And I was there with Jerry Hampton, a friend of mine, and neither of us saw them. And so the birds start getting up to fly, and there's all the sandhills are taking off one right after another. I'm watching all the sandhills, and I'm thinking, great, the bird's not here. And so honestly, all the sandhills are almost gone. And all of a sudden, out of the back of the marsh comes these two big whoopers. It was awesome. I once around, and once again, I'm fumbling around with my camera because for some reason I never think to get the camera ready ahead of time. And finally snapped off a couple of shots as they were flying away. So I didn't really get anything great, but you can see the white, they're white at least. That's about it. But they were really cool. That was a really awesome bird. Obviously a whooping crane that's not something you're going to see too often in northern Illinois. So that was pretty cool. And then November 26th, I remember the date. I don't know why. It was around Thanksgiving. Maybe it was the day after Thanksgiving. I don't remember, something like that. And it was raining. So I wasn't out on my bike at all. But Adam Sell was over at Independence Grove looking at geese, and sure enough, finds a Ross's goose. So I get on my bike, put on my rain jacket, get on the trail, and it stopped raining. That was really nice that it stopped raining. So rode over to Independence Grove where I had the ear grebe in April. So Independence Grove pulling in some birds during the big year, which is nice because that's a nice quick chase. Got down there and I was thinking the goose was going to be in the water floating around. So I'm riding down the bike path, flying down the path, looking in the water for the birds, and I don't see any geese at all. So I'm thinking they all flew away. So I'm riding down there, and this is the bike path, like right here. So the bird is literally right next to the bike path. So I'm flying down the bike path. Honestly, I almost ran over the bird with my bike. I saw the bird sitting next to me on the trail, threw the brakes on, and swerved left to try to avoid hitting the bird and not scaring it away at the same time. And miraculously succeeded in not flushing the bird. So I was actually able to get some pretty good photos of it. And but that was pretty funny. And there was a bunch of people in the parking lot watching me ride my bike up to the bird, just laughing their heads off at me, almost wiping out on my bike, trying to avoid running over a Ross's goose. That was pretty funny. But that was a great bird. Another nice find by Adam Sell. He probably found 8 birds for me on my big year, I think. There's some nice pintail over at Rollins Savannah across the street. It's probably the best waterfowl spot in the county for anything that's not a diving duck like scoters. Those are all in Lake Michigan, but for all the puddle ducks and swans and such, Rollins is great. And then snow buntings in North Point Marina, best spot for those. I'm really far away, but it's always a great spot and get good looks at them. And then came December. And so December's here. I really didn't have much left to do in my big year in December. It's Christmas bird count month. I really love doing Christmas bird counts. I do probably like at least 5 a year. Try to do more than that if I can, but not, and those aren't on my bike. So I can't really get a whole lot in December. But so the first week in December was pretty much when I ended my biking big year. So the next 2 weeks after that were Christmas bird counts, and actually next 3 weeks after that, the rest of the month basically, because there's some in the last week. the second week. Yeah. So it was pretty much the first week in December, and that was it. But there was one bird that I really still could get. Somebody had a rufous hummingbird at their feeder in Lisle, Illinois, which is another DuPage County bird, a little bit further south than where I went last time, I think. But this bird had been hanging out there for quite a while, and I came up with this grand idea. This would be over 100 miles in one day if I went down there and back in the same day. That would be my longest trip of the year in one day. I did one. Oh, I didn't go over my big day for May. I'll have to go back. I'll go back and talk about that. So anyway, this would be my longest chase though. The other one was the black-headed grosbeak. This would be my longest chase for a bird. So I got up really early, rode. I think I left the house at like 2 a.m. So just as a side note, one of the great things that I learned about biking for birds is riding at night. Riding at night is awesome, except in the winter when it's freezing cold. But the rest of the year, riding at night is the best. There's no traffic, there's no wind, and the temperatures are usually pretty mild. So at the beginning, I really didn't like riding at night because I'm not big about night anyway, because, it's scary at night. So I light my bike up pretty well. So I really wasn't worried about not being seen by drivers. I have lights all over the place. I have reflectors on my pants. I got reflectors on my bike all over the place. I have a really nice headlamp. So I'm not really worried about that part of it. But, there's people out at night sometimes that are a little shady. So, but I found that the only people I ever saw at night when I was out on my bike were people walking their dogs. That was pretty much it. Few drivers would drive by. It was nothing though. And I was out at night quite a bit because I tried to get places first thing in the morning. So I would leave at 4 a.m. pretty often. So I would go to bed early, get up at like 3. And so there was a lot of going to bed early at night during that year. So anyway, I got up early about 2 a.m. and I think it was about a 5-hour ride to Lisle to get the rufous hummingbird, which I had great looks at, but of course I only got one shot of because then my camera battery died because I didn't check my camera battery before I left. So that wasn't spectacular, but I got enough to ID the bird, so that was good. And it had been seen by lots of people anyway, so it was okay. Not great, but okay. I did have nice looks at it though while I was there, so that was cool. So I sat there for a while, enjoying the bird, and then went over to Starbucks, had a nice cup of coffee to celebrate. There weren't very many people there though, which is kind of a bummer because they'd already seen the hummingbird. Everybody had already seen it because it's already been there for like a week. So I was kind of late getting there. But that was and I did a 100-mile ride that day to end the year. So that was kind of cool. And that was pretty much it. So now I did my big day in May. So go back to that because I forgot to finish that story. So I was trying to break the green big day record of 135. So I had my day all planned out in April. I think in April I rode like 90 miles or 88 maybe when I did my practice big day in April. And that was really fun. I actually felt really good. So I was thinking I was going to be dead after doing it, but I actually felt pretty good. So that was very uplifting. So I did it again in May for my big day. And the key to doing a big day, if you've never done one, is you got to pick the right day. That's 90% of it, I bet. And it's so dependent on the weather. You got to have the right wind conditions and frontal conditions, try and get as close to a fallout condition as you can get. I picked the perfect day. It was beautiful. I mean, it rained in the morning a little bit, and so it brought the birds down because we had a nice southerly flow, so lots of movement overnight. Then it rained, brought the birds down, then cleared up, and the sun came out, perfect for the afternoon, so you could find some raptors and such. I was killing it in the morning. I think and I started at Illinois Beach State Park, and I think I had 26 species of warblers and about 15 veeries. And by the time it was, I don't know, 10:30 or 11 o'clock in the morning. And it was phenomenal. So I'm heading out going, this is great. I'm in a great position right now. I think I have a good shot at breaking this record. So I start heading south. From there, I go to Waukegan Beach, get a bunch of stuff there. From there, it's through North Chicago to Fort Sheridan. And through North Chicago there's not a whole lot there. And have to go up to the bike path, and you have to ride down Sheridan Road a ways, which is not a problem. There's not a lot of traffic there. But you get on some bike paths that have some dicey stuff, like a lot of broken glass and things like that. Not the greatest. And sure enough, I get a flat tire. Now, for most bike riders, a flat tire is no big deal. They'll just or patch the inner tube or change the inner tube and be done with it, back on their bike in 10 or 15 minutes. That's the way it should be done. I don't know how to change an inner tube. Never done one in my entire life. So yeah, that's a problem that I should have solved a long time ago. I still have never done one. I bought puncture resistant tires instead. And I still have never changed one, which is kind of embarrassing. And I always go, I'm going to go out and practice so I can be ready to change one. I've never done it. So yeah, we'll see if I do it, if I practice it before I go out again in May. But anyway, I had to stop my big day because of the flat tire and then take my bike in to get it fixed. And so I never got to break the record. I got 123 species that day, I think. Which is kind of disappointing, but it's my own fault. So the next year I did it again and missed picking the right day by one day. And I can't remember how many species I had. Last year I did pretty well, except I ran into problems with resupplying food and water because I was going to go to the Starbucks in Lake Forest and fill up on water and get something to eat. And it was closed. I guess they never reopened after COVID. Did not know this. Didn't even think to check that because I didn't think it would happen. But so I ended up having, in that stretch, this is the longest one I have to ride without stopping. And so I was really gassed, running out of energy. I was basically on empty at that point. So I had to head home. And so I had to abandon early and miss a couple of spots that would have gotten, a decent number of birds. And still I ended up with 130. If I would have been well supplied and ready to go, I think I would have had a decent shot at breaking it. So hopefully this year I can put together a good route, do the right day, and actually have my resupply all figured out and not get a flat tire, or at least know how to fix a flat tire. And if I do all that, I should have a much better shot at doing it. A lot of it's luck too, of course, but most of these things I could have prevented if I thought about it ahead of time. So yeah, there you go. Oh, and so I've gone pretty long. Geez, are you guys still there? Oh, there's
We're still with you, Beau.
Gosh, I didn't realize how long I was talking. Sorry about that. I can talk pretty long. Yeah, I did a count circle big year last year. So you do a 7.5 mile diameter around your house. I did that. I had 224 species on my bike last year, or not last year, in 2021. That wasn't last year. All right, so here's my book. If you're interested in reading about some of my adventures, which were pretty fun, and there's a lot more photos and things and maps of my routes and so on and so forth, you can go on Amazon. My book is titled Extreme Birding, My Biking Big Year. So you can get it on Kindle or paperback. I think there's actually might be a Kindle sale going on right now too. So I'd love for you to read it, enjoy it. And yeah, thanks for having me speak. It's been a pleasure.
Great, great. Um, so interesting. Oh my goodness, I'm over here laughing away with you, and I'm thinking about, oh no, missed the snowy owl.
Oh yeah.
Um, so we do have a question for you.
Okay.
Steve Timble on Facebook asked, did you see the cliff swallows at Northwestern along the bike path?
Uh, I didn't actually go to the university. I rode down Sheridan Road, like past the university, but no, I mean I get cliff swallows out by my house, so I wasn't really looking to see, cliff swallows anywhere. So
Mhm.
I didn't make any deviation from my route for that. I know that I've heard of where those are though, so I know what he's talking about.
Ah,
So yeah, those
okay.
are great birds.
He's also offering to teach you how to swap out inner tubes,
Thanks. That
just
I
in
could
case.
probably use. Yeah. Thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Oh, and one of our participants said, boy, it sounds like such a fun adventure that you went on.
Oh, it was fun. Yeah. It really was. I learned a lot of things, both
Yeah.
birding and non-birding. So yeah.
I really appreciated and liked hearing like some of the things that you wish you would have done differently
Oh yeah.
to make
Yeah.
it easier because we're all human and those things do happen. I had a question on what kind of a camera do you use?
I have a it's just a digital point and shoot. But
A digital point and shoot. So it
it's
must
a
not take up very much room.
here. It's a I don't even know what kind of camera I got. Oh, it's a Panasonic Lumix. It's got a micro zoom, like 20x micro zoom. So
Okay.
it actually takes pretty good photos of birds that are not that close. So, and then I take iPhone shots through my scope too, which I'm really bad at. I'm not a good photographer at all. I've tried to learn how to use stuff, and I just got a new phone. And I tried to take a picture of the Ross's call with my phone, and I couldn't even get it to get an image on here. So I'm gonna have to learn how to do that now.
There you go. It's always
Yeah,
something new to learn, right?
yeah, yeah.
So since that big year, you don't really bike quite as much. Is that true?
So I don't bike like I did in 2020, that's for sure. But I try to get out. Like in 2021, I did the Count Circle bid year and did 2,000 miles still, which was it's still a fair amount.
Yeah.
Uh, I didn't bike that much last year. I'm not sure why I didn't bike that much last year. I don't really remember. So far this year, I've been trying to get out more. I have 3 bikes now. I bought a fat tire bike to ride in the wintertime so I can get on the trails more in the winter. It's got some suspension on it, which helps immensely riding on frozen trails. So I've been out actually a lot more on that bike this winter. I haven't looked to see, I think my total on my bike for this winter is like 60 species or something so far. So it's not too bad. I've only ridden at Rollins though. I haven't gone anywhere substantial. So
Mhm.
that's a lot of that's been because of the weather though. It's either been super cold or frozen or
Windy.
snowing or windy. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so I
Are you
haven't done.
bringing your bike with you when you come out to the Dunes Birding
So
Festival?
wasn't planning on it. No, I wasn't going to.
Just curious.
Yeah, that's the other thing I do too is I drive places and I take my bike with me and then ride it when I get there. So I
Are
haven't.
you thinking about any other doing like another green big year in the future?
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know. I'm thinking I've been thinking about it. I don't know if it's ever going to come to fruition, but trying to get 300 on my bike in Illinois is something that is appealing to me to try.
That would be quite a goal.
I'd have to make a multi-day trip to Southern Illinois. So,
Yeah.
but I read about all these trips people take across the country on their bike, and I'm just like, if they go across the country, I should be able to do one in Illinois.
Just got to work out the logistics, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
Well, one of our participants, Mary Beth, says that your adventure was very inspiring.
oh, thanks. I
And I
appreciate
have to agree with that. Just listening about it, and how you went about it, and the birds that you got to see, and the unusual things. Yeah, was very fun to listen to. Thank you so much for sharing that.
I
Yeah.
appreciate that. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're just gonna check to see if there's any more questions, but we really appreciate you taking the time. Oh, here's one. If you take your bike on the train, oh, does that count as green?
No, you got to ride it from your house. I mean, the count is really green.
Yeah, I don't know,
Got to
because
be
you're
from your
still,
house. But
yeah,
there's different categories of green
is
big
there?
ears. You can do no fuel used on your own or used public transportation. There's a category for that too. So yeah.
Yeah, all right. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. I'm
No
just going to
problem.
share with everybody a little bit of our information here that we wanted to, just another reminder that this Saturday, there's 3 spots left for the Highland Rookery with Matt Gillespie and Alex Ross. Alex Ross gave us a presentation on the Highland Rookery last month. Very fun. And Matt Gillespie is an Illinois and Indiana birder and on our board.
That's a great guy.
Also our next see if I can get our next slide to come up. There it is. And then the next program in April is going to be about bird-friendly glass, changing the flight of bird conservation. And there was actually going to be some giveaways connected to this, and we'll give you more information about that. Bird-friendly glass, of course, is a very important topic now with all of the developments and high rises and bird collisions during migration, et cetera, et cetera. So that's going to be a very interesting program. Come for that. And then the walks in April, first weekend of every month in April, May, and June. The Saturday is at the State Park with Dan Baraball. The Sunday one is within the National Park, meeting at the Visitor Center, and I will be doing the first one on Sunday, April 2nd. No registration required for that one. The one on Saturday, go to Eventbrite, and again, members are free. And then last but not least is our merchandise that you can get for Dunes-Calumet on threadless.com. And be sure to check that out. We get a little fundraising kickback for that. I am sporting the sweatshirt that they have. Go ahead and stop the share so I can show everybody my sweatshirt that has that has our little logo and picture on it. So I want to just thank everybody for joining us today, and thank you both for a very delicious and inspiring, even though I'll never be on a bike, has given me some ideas though about, this whole idea about a big day in your little patch is kind of interesting. So thank you so much for joining us. And everybody have a terrific week and get out there and happy birding.
Thank you.